Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for How to Read Buyer Signals and Tell the Story That Closes Deals, Devin Reed. My name is Nicole Kaysen. I'm the event marketing specialist here at Consensus, and I will be your moderator for today's session. This webinar is presented by Consensus, the leading demo automation platform that empowers sales teams to deliver interactive demos, engaging product tours, and immersive simulations. And you can learn more at goconsensus.com. And I actually wanted to share something very exciting today. So we are introducing Consensus for Marketing. So buyers research independently and make decisions faster than ever. And therefore, marketing teams need a way to engage effectively. So Consensus for Marketing lets you create personalized, on-demand product tours and video demos, mobile first and AI powered. So you can put your product at the center of demand creation, capture high quality leads, and drive measurable pipeline growth. And you can also head to goconsensus.com to learn more about that. We are really excited to share Consensus for Marketing. And the last thing I will share is we really encourage you to participate in today's session. We love when you utilize the chat, share your thoughts, let us know what you think. Feel free to post questions at any time using the Q&A on the right side of your screen. We will make sure we get to those either throughout the session or at the end, but don't be shy. And if at any time you run into technical difficulties, locate that little gear icon at the bottom of your screen. It'll give you some tips on troubleshooting. So with that, I would love to welcome our speaker. The Reader, Devin's marketing consulting and media company, helps SaaS marketers grow audience, brand, and pipeline with memorable content. As former head of content at Gong and Clary, scaling Gong's brand from 20 million to 200 million ARR, Devin advises fast-growing startups like Notion, Wiz, and Audience Plus. He creates content strategies that fuel growth, turn readers into raving fans, and build trusted brands. His podcast also reached 10K downloads in 8 episodes, and that is Read Between the Lines. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Devin.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicole. What's up, everybody? I'm stoked to be here. I actually I nerd out on this stuff, so you're probably going to see me go on some tangents. I'll probably tell some dad jokes. I'm a dad of 2 little girls, and if you caught the name of my podcast, Read Between the Lines, you're not going to be too surprised that I like a good pun. So to make the most out of it, no one wants me to just talk at them for the next 30, or so minutes, however long we go. So I'd love if you got comfortable with the chat, which I know a lot of you have. Shout out to Dee, she's got dad jokes. Georgia too. Feel free to hang out there. You can ask me questions there or in the Q&A. I'm going to do my best to kind of bounce around between talking, sharing some stuff in the chat. So feel free to do that. A little bit about me. I actually started my career in sales. So about 12, 13 years ago, after college, I found myself into sales roles. And then 6 years in, I moved over to marketing. So I was the second sales rep at Gong back in 2017, and then moved over to head of content. And was basically in charge of all of our content marketing efforts for a very sales-focused team and company. And the reason that I share that is because my perspective is pretty diligent on, I want to understand my audience and my market the best that I can. I truly believe that closest to the customer wins. And the sales background has helped me really focus on conversions and results. And so I think it's like a very powerful 1-2 punch. If you can understand your market better than your competitors, and then you equip your marketing and sales team with different signals that we'll talk about in a second, so your sales team has the best opportunity to close deals. And I know that's kind of maybe sounds like obvious or very fundamental, but it is. And I think that's an important starting point. So as we go through today, I think that background will be helpful. And as I'm kind of working with different marketing teams today as part of my business, what I found is like everyone's really trying to get more leads and get more pipeline. And then once you get leads and pipeline going, the next ask is like, how do we close these deals faster, right? How do we accelerate that? And so what I've found is, again, knowing your audience better than your competitors helps you do all those things. And so if you can have access to buyer signals, that can be a huge advantage. So I think to like get us started, I'd love to know like where are you in your kind of journey with like buyer signals? So go ahead and put it in the chat. Like, do you have a lot of them? Maybe you've got a lot of tools. Maybe you've got one great tool, but like, I'm curious, like, do you have a lot of signals? Do you have like some, if you're kind of going like, oh, we have a little bit of signals happening, maybe it's getting to CRM, maybe not. Or do you have like zero? Like we just don't have any buyer signals ready for us. It'd be good to kind of get a vibe check here. And we'll give Todd the crown of the best dad joke as I pop back over to the chat because it does become apparent. So we're having fun. I like that. But let me know in the chat if you have a lot of signals, few, none at all. And while that's happening, thanks, Bruce. Another thing that's funny is like I actually don't believe in top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel, or tofu. What is that? Tofu, mofu, bofu. If you've seen the acronyms, um, and it's actually funny because when I was at Clary, my most recent in-house job, I actually presented my content strategy to the CEO and C-suite, and I opened up by telling them like, there's no such thing as top of funnel. There's no such thing as like a real funnel. And the reason I say that is because no buyer or prospect woke up today and was like, you know what, I think I'm top of funnel today when it comes to buying XYZ, or I'm middle funnel or bottom funnel. We don't really think in that way. But what we do is we engage with content and different kind of like web resources, and that actually signals where folks are at. And I think there's a better way than looking at tofu, mofu, and I promise that's the last time I'll say those acronyms today. All right, where are we at? Chris, I'm solo, so someone reaches out, that's it. Few signals. Cheyenne, dodging combos. Okay, so we're kind of a little bit all over the place in a good way, I think. Big focus, Art, awesome. Okay, cool. I mean, obviously we're all focused on it because we're here today, or maybe just wanted to learn a little bit more. But instead of like, if I'm going to say, hey, there's no such thing as, top of funnel, middle, et cetera, we have to have another framework or another kind of sense of how we want to measure this stuff. So, what I want to share, I'm going to share my screen, is the 5 stages of awareness. Let me know yes or no if you're familiar with this. This is from Eugene Schwartz, who is a very famous copywriter. I think he came out with it in the 70s. Someone can correct my date if not correct. But what I found is this is like a super helpful framework to actually understand where buyers are at. And I say buyers generally like folks in our market. Not everyone is actually like a buyer yet, but there's really like 5 stages. And he mapped these out, and I found these to be very true. So first we have unaware. These are folks that are completely oblivious to the problem that you solve and their need to solve it, right? This is a lot of times people would say, that's just the way it is, right? They're running into friction, they're running into problems, but they haven't like seen it yet. They haven't recognized it. So we have unaware. Number 2, we have problem aware. These are folks who are conscious and frustrated by the problem, but they're unaware of solutions that exist or that yours exists, right? So now they're saying, okay, I do have an issue. I've got a problem. Something's frustrating me. But they haven't sought any solution yet. But once they do, they move into number 3, which is solution aware. They're actively seeking information and exploring solutions to their pain points. At this time, I would say they're probably a quote unquote buyer or really like a prospect because they are actively seeking out information. Number 4, once they've done some of that research, they become product aware. They recognize your product as a solution and they want to learn more. So this is kind of like we get down to the consideration list, right? We're doing research, maybe going to G2, maybe you're asking your friends and colleagues like, hey, what's there some solutions that you guys use? And now they're saying, okay, great, I want to learn more and go deeper. And then 5 is most aware, and it's completely educated on the solution's key features and benefits, and they're ready to buy. So this is a helpful framework. Looks like it's new to folks. Great. I would highly recommend taking a screenshot of this. I didn't make it up. This is like, but it is like the Bible to me from a marketing standpoint. But this is really helpful because as you are thinking through signals, we want to map it to one of these stages. And some of the challenges that I see teams running into is they kind of think like any engagement is a buyer signal, as in like actually buying ready, like buyer ready signal. And so a lot of times we go to folks' websites and they kind of like slam the CTA of like a demo, talk to sales, request a demo. It's all over their website, all over their content, and usually in their outbound sequences and often ads as well. And so what happens is there's kind of this misalignment where we're saying, hey, we're probably really targeting folks that are, stage 4 and 5 with a demo CTA or talk to sales CTA. And we accidentally completely ignore and send the wrong CTA to all those folks in the top 3. So that's what I found is like, okay, if we have these 5 stages of awareness and we agree these are how, folks start to kind of identify and behave, the next stage is like, okay, how do we actually take this for our world in B2B, right? For selling SaaS and software like I do and many folks on the call do. And so what I've done is I put together kind of like, okay, what's next? And this is how I kind of put this stuff into play. So I'm going to share this tab. I just want to double check we can see it. Great. All right, cool. Any Q&A? No. Feel free to drop Q&A if you got them. All right. So now that we know we have these 5 stages, let's kind of talk through like, how do we actually activate this and make it helpful? So we're going to break it down by stage here. Fantastic. Okay. So first we have stage 1. My favorite part of all of these slides is going to be the buyer mindset. Because once you can empathize with them and understand where your buyer is at, I'm going to use that phrase buyer, even if they're not like in a buying situation yet. You're going to be a lot more persuasive, which is going to make you a lot more effective, right? So if we say, okay, we're unaware, I don't even know that I have a problem. The typical signals are going to be things like low engagement, passive content consumption, broad topic curiosity. It's almost like there isn't much signal, right? Because they're unaware. They're not acting in any certain way. They're not really showing intent to learn, and they're not really showing intent to buy yet. So when you start to think of, okay, how can I sell or market to these folks? We want to tell the problem story. You might have heard like sell the problem, not the product. That's exactly what this is. It's kind of a cliche or, a well-accepted principle for a reason. And so our goal is to spark curiosity. We're going to want to make people aware of a problem that they have. And if you find yourself marketing the problem, also keep in mind, not everybody in your TAM, not everybody you could sell to is always going to recognize that problem, and that's okay. We still want to get really specific with that problem, tell it in great detail, and hopefully we get our buyers to see themselves in that problem. We're like, oh, that looks like me. That sounds exactly like what my, 9 to 10 a.m. looked like today when I was trying to solve XYZ problem. So whether you're thinking of how do I equip my sales team or what content or marketing program should I put together, we're going to want to put things together like point of view content, category narratives, thought leadership posts, and like trend reports, right? The super high level things that are often called top of funnel, even though they're full funnel. But that's where we're going to want to start. Jumping over to if you hear me pause, I'm jumping over to back and forth between this and the chat. Yeah, all right, this is great. This buyer is 57% through the buying process by the time they engage. Yeah, we're going to probably get even further. We're only on slide 1. We're going to get even further before anyone's probably reaching out to sales. All right, cool. Let's jump over to stage 2. Now we've sent them that, they've engaged with some sort of thought leadership, let's say, and they're problem aware. They're going, you know what? There's something broken in my process, in my workflow. Something isn't quite right. And the signals are usually starting to find things that are more specific searches around pain points. How to is often a good signal. When I was selling to salespeople, sales reps at Gong and Clarion, some previous jobs, we would start to see things like how to forecast accurately. That's a big signal right there. Because if there's intent to learn how to forecast accurately, there's definitely a problem underneath that, right? We're very rarely searching how to do things unless there's something we're trying to accomplish. But you can also find things in like social comments and offer signups. So if you find people downloading or signing up for a webinar like this, if you find people, filling out a form for some sort of guide, that is a signal of intent to learn, intent to solve. And so we're not going to jam a CTA. We're not going to say, hey, I saw you look at that thought leadership report, time to go get a demo ASAP. But instead, we might want to send additional content to kind of help continue that educational journey. Things like benchmark reports, state of industry guides, and things like today, which are like problem-centric webinars, right? Today, we're here to solve, hey, I have or want to have buyer signals, but I don't really know what to do with them. Right. So it's a great way to start. Oh, awesome, Art. I jumped back over to the chat and you're getting all the emojis. 100, I love that. Getting an emoji added to your chat in a live event feels good. It's very validating. All right, cool. Let's go over to stage 3, because now we're starting to get into kind of like that consideration mode. right? We've done some research, and now our mindset is, I know what kind of solution I need. Now, when I say kind of solution, I'm not even talking yet about the company or the actual product. Think of it more as like the category, right? I know that I need a demo automation tool. I gotta get something in that sphere, right, to solve this problem. And so now we're starting to show some intent to evaluate and to do deeper research. So you might find things like comparing vendors. This is where sending or having and sending like side-by-side pages, comparison pages are very helpful. If someone's coming in and they're like, okay, I want, a certain category, and here's like 2 or 3 companies that I've heard of, you want your page to pop up to start to compare that, right? You might also find things like niche webinars. Sometimes it's like product use cases, right? Things that would be considered middle funnel. And they also might start to look at case studies. And they're not looking for proof in the case study that it works. They're looking to see if it's right for them. So the narrative approach is, how do you differentiate? How are you different? And your philosophy. So it's not just saying, hey, here's a 10-point checklist that we have, you've seen them before. We have all the green checks and our competitors have like 2 and then all these red X's. It's really more of just saying, like, what is the mission that your company is out to solve, out to complete, and how do you go about doing that at a high level? So you got your comparison guides we talked about, why now content, and demo teasers. Demo teasers can be just short, not like 20-minute demos, long demos. It can be little, it can be like 30 to 60 seconds sometimes, just on these little use cases. All right, we're going from solution aware, we're doing our comparison, and now we're product aware. I know who you are, convince me. And this is where you might call a hot lead. Sales would be, this is definitely a time, you could argue, and we can chat if you guys want to have questions of like, at what stage do you send this to a sales rep, right, to give them the highest chance of conversion? Now, obviously, if you send them stage 3, if you've got signals and you're like, this is kind of a stage 3 buyer versus stage 4, you're going to have different conversion rates because they're more ready. Going back to what Art said, like, where are they in that like roughly 57% of research? But now that they're like, okay, we know that you exist, convince me that you're right for me. So this is where you're going to see things like direct website visits, demo requests, deal engagement, and stakeholder sharing content. A great example of that is what Consensus does, right? You can have a automated demo, send that out to buyers, or even have it on your website, depending on, again, the stage, and you can see our folks engaging, or multiple folks engaging in an account. That is when, like, you get the fire emoji next to your lead in your CRM, and like, they are absolutely in a consideration phase, but also getting close to a decision phase. Like, they are looking to make a decision. So this is where we need to go from proof to belief, and reinforce confidence with social proof and ROI. This is where we need to start to have what I call undeniable proof that it works and that it's right for you. And so we need to make sure that we have a library of different proof points. You can have it for different use cases. Again, if you have like more of a point solution versus a platform, this is going to get a little more or less complex. But you want to make the ultimate goal here is you want to de-risk the decision. You want to make it seem like the obvious choice is you. And so ways we can do that are ROI calculators, tailored demos, customer video stories, case studies, right? We all hopefully have some of those in our arsenal here. And then last is when we get to most aware, which I always kind of laughed at that title. I always felt like Eugene maybe got a little lazy with most. It's a little vague for me. But now I'm ready to buy or renew, reassure me, right? So now they're like, all right, we're making a decision. There's probably a line item in their budget. And so these are going to be things in funnel, in your sales process, late stage deals, champion engagement, renewal check-ins, right? These are true buyer signals in terms of like, we are looking to buy and spend some money here. So we want to show value, progress, momentum, and tell the transformation story we're part of. And we're going to get on transformation stories in a few minutes here. So it's a very powerful marketing and sales skill. And so offers and examples, renewal content, customer success, roadmap previews. That's also really important because buyers are not just thinking of the contract, they're thinking what happens after. It's funny because in sales, we think the signature is like kind of the end a lot of times, but for customers, it's actually the beginning. And so it's helpful sometimes to show, not only roadmap of maybe your product, but also what does the relationship look like? How often do I meet my CSM? What are the QBRs, right? When you can start to paint that picture of what's in the future, they can imagine themselves there. And again, that de-risks the decision and makes it even easier. So those are the 5 stages. We talked through the buyer mindset, different signals you'll start to see, and offers and assets that you can either send, again, have on your website on different pages, and of course, arm your sales reps so that they have everything they need at the right time. I'll pause there. I'm going to jump back over to Goldcast. Any questions on the 5 stages? And maybe you're thinking too, another thing, a good critical thinking exercise might also be like kind of look at what's on your Q4 radar. What are you, and starting to say, hey, what are we missing today? So as we start to plan out in Q1, we're making sure that we have assets and narratives and stories for these different 5 stages. Chances are you might be a little heavy in one and a little light in another across those 5.
Devin, we actually have a question in the chat, in the Q&A, from Jesse that says, do you suggest adding a field in your CRM to document the awareness stages for each contact, or what's the best way to track?
Jesse, I just added a 3rd thumbs up because I absolutely love that. Yeah, so the next thing from that is if you take like those slides, I'm happy to share them out, Nicole, if we want to, if folks want them after this, is start to say, okay, what do we have today? What do we have and what do we don't have? And come to an agreement internally of what do we decide like an MQL is, like maybe at like which stage, right? Or can we set up some automation so, hey, when we see these signals, we can automatically update the CRM. So Nicole in our CRM becomes stage 4, stage 5 based on those signals. So I think that's a great idea. The thing too is like, so adding a field to your CRM is awesome for documentation. The bigger thing though is also aligning internally on this, this framework and making sure your marketing and your sales team also recognize what stage 1 really means, what stage 2 really means. So it's kind of like almost like a shared language internally. Just like today, you might have what MQL is, or hopefully you agree on what an MQL is. I know that's its own can of worms sometimes, and what an opportunity is. But if you think about it, it's like how can we expect to generate leads? If I don't know if you have 10 people across your sales marketing, 20, 1,000, right? Like how can we consistently generate leads and accelerate the close if we don't all agree on like what a good lead is or what these stages are? So I think that's just as important.
And there was a question in the chat that said, regarding your question on when to shift SQL from MQL, how do you maximize keeping the prospects moving through the stages?
Yeah, which one's, is that Lindsay there?
Bruce, I think, asked
Bruce.
it.
You got it. Do you mind repeating it? Sorry, I was trying to find it, but I actually don't see it. Do you mind repeating that for me, Nicole?
That's it. Yeah. It says, regarding your question on when to shift to a SQL from a MQL, how do you maximize keeping the prospects moving through the stages?
Yeah, it's a good point. So, I mean, my thought is like you can map out, like imagine on the top, you kind of have like, if you have like a line, you're like, okay, we have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Underneath that, you could say, what are different assets that we have today that match with that stage, right? So for example, you could say, hey, after our first call, let me jump back over to, let's jump back over to our slides real quick, if that's cool, help us refer. Right, so let's see, if we're talking about a first call, so they've raised their hand, they're meeting with sales, they're probably in this stage, I would imagine. Let's see, do we think they're in 3 or 4? Comparing vendors, it could be either, honestly. Sometimes when people start to compare, they like to take a demo. Sometimes people want to know who you are first. So I'd say somewhere in that 3 to 4 stage, right, is like, okay, we all agree, and you just pick one. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but you say, okay, great. If they just took a demo request, let's look over here and say, what are things that either our sales rep could do on that call, or we can set up some automation and marketing. We can have this stuff set up. So we either have the sales rep on the call, equipping the sales rep to do it after the call, and or setting up automation with marketing or retargeting to say, hey, great, now that you're in our sales cycle, here's a tailored demo based on some key use cases you shared. Or, hey, here's a video of a customer who looks and sounds just like you, right? Similar industry, similar size, similar problem, probably the most important one. So I would say is like, if you map out these stages and these different assets, Then the game is just how do we get it to them, right? How do we send this to them? Is it on the call? And I would say, like, don't just put it on your reps to be like, hey, there's all these things you could be doing on the call. I think it's a good partnership of saying, let's make sure our sales reps know what's going on, and also our marketing team has different assets across these stages. So it's basically just sending them content of where they're at, and probably looking at the next phase as well to help move them through, versus sending them like more thought leadership. Like, we don't need more thought leadership once they're in a sales, cycle.
So I'm seeing a bunch of questions come into the Q&A, Devin. Do you want to answer those now, or do you want to kind of keep moving through and then we'll revisit them a little bit later?
I'm having fun with Q&A. I'll be honest, I love Q&A. When I don't get Qs, I get a little nervous. I'm like, no one was listening or they didn't like it. So yeah, go ahead. Let's keep going through them.
Sounds good. So the next one says, how do you sprinkle the different content stages in the website? I'm guessing unaware and problem aware are front and center, and the rest is on a need to know basis.
I love that question. I don't know if anyone heard, I'm in Montana. I live in San Diego. I'm in Montana with for a client offsite. And the reason I bring that up is because we just talked about this yesterday at the offsite. We had our point of view. We're talking about the problem we solve. And then it was like, okay, this is in a Google Doc. Like, how does this take shape on the website? So the first thing is when someone jumps to a website, and obviously there's so many ways we can find it, whether it's direct or clicks, all that good stuff. But the first thing we think is like, what is this category? Right? Oh, this is like, the demo automation, for example, is the category. Okay, great. Now, you may or may not know exactly what that means. So you're going to scroll down. My advice is that is where the problem section should go, right underneath under the fold, right? So that's where I would like to put the problem section and make it super clear what the problem is. If you can quantify it even better, even if it's just emotional, quantification, that's great too. So pretty front and center on the website is where I would like that problem to be, because we know that people aren't going to scroll through the entire website probably on the homepage. So if you only get H1 and right below the line, I think it's important to know, hey, what category are we and what problem do we solve? Now, as you start to go down, you're going to want to learn, how does this product work? And that's where you can obviously link out to different product pages. And what was the other one? Yeah. And then the other thing too is, like, as we were sharing, you have case studies. As you go down, you want to say, well, do other people who look like me buy this? If they do, why did they buy? What results did they see? And then you can link out to different case studies, ROI calculators. Like, that's a really good way to kind of think of, like, almost having your website match those 5 stages. Like, as you go down, you should be more kind of like qualified, so to speak, or more buyer ready. It depends on the platform and what you sell, but that's kind of how I would think about it. Let me know if that was helpful, Manuel.
Awesome. And then Lindsay asked, any tips on how to get sales and marketing to agree on said qualified leads?
If we extended this webinar another 7 hours, Lindsay, we would probably still not be able to get it all done. It is really hard. And I'm being obviously playful there. Here's what actually the best tip I think I could give you. And this is what I used to do, because when I was at Gong, as I shared, we were at 20 million when I started, and we were at 200 or actually 220 when I left. So the sales team grew probably actually exponentially at that time. The product changed a lot. We stopped selling just to VPs of sales, and now there's a whole buyer committee. And so it can get really muddy on, like, what actually is a qualified lead. So what I would do probably quarterly was I'd go over to my VP of sales, and I would say, hey, I know there's so many people that are involved in a deal, right? Everyone from the CFO to sales reps to VPs, there's like probably 10 to 12 people that, especially in enterprise, that we sell to. But if you could have one person go to the website and click request a demo to start the sales process, who would that be? And he told me still the VP of sales, like the business user decision maker, like the business unit decision maker. That's what I was going for. And so I think that's super helpful. Like, a CFO, first of all, isn't probably going to come in, but even if they do, that's not like the best qualified lead that we want. We want that certain profile of a person. The second question I asked is, what are the things you want that person to say on a first call, and what are the things you don't want to hear on a first call? Right? So it could be things like, oh, we don't have any sales reps. Okay, well, if you don't have any sales reps, you're not a qualified lead. Or, hey, we want to hear that they have a sales performance problem and it's like a top 5 initiative for their sales org. So what you can start to do is like triangulate like, hey, who's the actual persona that we want to make a qualified lead and who isn't? And then also where in the kind of buyer journey is really what or this awareness journey is really what we're talking about. We're like, how product, I realize I'm still sharing my screen, but actually it's the right one. Like, are you okay with product aware? Do you need them to be this ready? Or can they be solution aware? Or can they be problem aware, right? Like, what do you want? We obviously aren't going to be able to control that all the time, but when you think about, hey, what is a truly qualified lead? This is a good place to start. They might say problem aware is not enough. Don't send my team product aware, problem aware leads. We want people that are solution aware. All right, great. Now we can adjust our MQL model.
Great. Art asked, please clarify your no top of funnel and how, if this relates to the stages.
I don't know if you heard it earlier. I was being slightly playful, but not like I've bought SaaS before. I've sold a lot of it too. No one has ever identified as like, I'm currently in the middle of the funnel when I'm evaluating Gong, or, oh, as a buyer, I still think I'm top of funnel. I'm not quite ready for middle, Nicole. Like we don't actually think these ways. And so like, it's really less of like, hey, make them aware. And then, middle funnel, like all these things. It just feels very limited and a little bit outdated to me. So I think of more of like the behavior. We have certain thoughts and challenges, therefore our behavior mirrors that. And so my thing is like, let's not worry so much about top of funnel, middle funnel. Let's just understand where our buyers are at today. And I think this awareness framework does a better job because it's also more actionable, right? Like if you go to a sales rep who's like, I don't really know what middle funnel means. Honestly, most marketers don't because it's, again, not an agreed upon language. But if you can start saying, hey, we have buyers who are aware, like solution aware, problem aware, I think it's just a more specific way of understanding where they are, which means we can have a more tailored approach to them, which again will help with conversions and accelerating deals.
That's a good point.
Let's take one more, and then we'll do stories, and then we'll jump back to Q&A.
Perfect. Do you define the signals based on engagement with a particular content piece?
It can be. I think if it falls into one of those offer examples, that's like why I put it on there. So if we go back to like, I don't know, let's go back one here. So when I think of like unaware and problem aware, the things that are common is kind of the content types are pretty similar, which is like, these are pretty broad, right? So if someone says, hey, I want, let's go back here, like thought leadership content or a report, they might just be kind of like perusing and kind of keeping up to speed on their industry or their profession. If someone has a specific state of report, they're going to become problem aware in that report, right? Because that's usually like the second page is like, here's the problem we solve. That's why we have here's this big problem in the market, rather. That's why we have all this data. So I think there's a time and a place where, yeah, certain content can start to signal where are they in the awareness, but I also wouldn't bank on just one signal dictating where they're at, right? We want to look at across multiple touch points. If someone clicks this, state of industry report, and then before we know it, we see them on an ROI calculator, like they might have jumped. They might have skipped stage 3 and went straight to stage 4. And so that's why I don't love the like linear necessarily, like it's always linear. People can kind of move and bounce around. And that's why when you're thinking of like, what is a qualified lead? It might be multiple of these touch points in a certain amount of time, right? It might be, hey, and within 3 weeks or 4 weeks, we want to see certain things. Or hey, within 1 week, if we see, someone hit the, click play on a tailored demo, right? We might want to take different action. So that's why I can't give you like a, hey, here's exactly what an MQL should look like for you. You kind of have to look at, hey, let's look at people who bought from us recently. Let's look at some of our best deals. And if you have it, kind of like reverse engineer, hey, well, what signals did they show? What content and programs did they engage with before they came inbound or before they said yes to, our sales outbound? Great questions. I hope I'm doing a good job. I can't see any faces except Nicole, so I'm just hoping she smiles once in a while. Okay, cool. So we talked about tons of awareness, and we'll come back to this if more questions come up. But now I want to talk about stories that sell. Now, I'm not going to tell you again, it could be a 3-hour webinar just on telling stories. But me being a simple and sometimes, when I was a sales rep, a little lazy, I wanted the fastest path to convincing someone. And I've learned that you actually can't force urgency. You can't manufacture desire. But what you can do is tell what I think is the most powerful story type, which is just before and after stories. So if you think of like a before and after story, we often think of like, at least me, like Invisalign, like you see like crooked teeth on one side and like, pretty white teeth on the other side, or, maybe someone who is a little overweight and now they're super shredded or what have you. There's a reason why those industries use that method over and over and over again. And that's because it works. But the reason that it works is because what you want folks to do in your before and after stories, let me stop sharing, sorry. What you want folks to do in your before and after stories is to self-identify. So for example, I have had braces twice in my life. I could probably whiten, but I've already had braces. So when I see like an Invisalign before and after, and I see kind of crooked teeth, I don't identify with that anymore because I've already solved that problem. But if I've been thinking, hey, I want to get my teeth corrected, I'm immediately identifying with the before stage. And then I see the desired state. And then my next question, of course, is how do I get there? And so if you can tell great before and after stories, especially across these different stages, that's going to be a great way to start to, one, motivate people to take action, and two, to kind of lean in and say, hey, this company, thought leader maybe at your company, they really understand me because they're describing the before state really well. That sounds exactly like me. And the after state is something that now I do desire. Right. But you can't force that on people. So I found that having that self-discovery via a before and after story is the most powerful kind of storytelling element you can have. And so I have a little exercise to bring this to life here. Thanks, Matt. I'm glad you like it too. It's my favorite. And it's fun. It's fun and kind of easier, honestly, than doing like some big, Scorsese movie plot line here on storytelling. Okay. So here's what I did. I pulled out a blurb that if you, it sounds like a plug, it's not. If you subscribe to my newsletter, you'll get an automated email, and it has this little blurb in there. I want to pull this up and show you. So I kind of broke it down. So there's a bunch of before and afters. So basically right before this, it's like, hey, congrats. Thanks for signing up. Here's what you're in for. And then I've got this little blurb here. Gone are the days of crickets in the comment section, my friend. You'll learn how to create irresistible content that your audience can't stop talking about. Say adios to the status quo. We'll unpack how to tie your content to strategic goals like revenue growth, pipeline gen, brand awareness, and more. Hell, if you use these insights and tactics correctly, your CEO will beg you to take more budget, he said from experience. Now, there's a lot of sauce on that one. I laid it on pretty thick, but you also can hear my tone on the webinar and in the writing. So I want you to take a second and see how many before and afters do you see? And put it in the chat. Maybe do you see 0? Do you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And I'll come back over to the chat and see. Nicole, you can play along too, even though you might have seen me scroll on our prep. You might know how many there are. Manny sees none. Could you imagine if there's like none? It was like a trick question. Don't worry, Manny, we'll get you there. Matt says 3, 3, 2. This one's a little tricky because it isn't Invisalign. It's not just A to B, it's a little bit. Art from, I keep reading art form because I mix those letters up. I like that. Okay, cool. So we've got a few folks guessing in here. I'm going to scroll down and we can see. And also maybe you see more that I highlighted. Maybe there's more or less than I saw. All right, so let's scroll down here. Okay, so we've got before and after. Now, obviously, you can probably see that this is all about content marketing, newsletter, and content growth. So what I was trying to do is say, hey, where are folks maybe at today? And the first thing was like crickets in the comment section. If anyone's ever spent a bunch of time writing a LinkedIn post and getting comments, my hand is raised for a reason, you're going to identify with that. And so the antithesis of that, or kind of the solution, would be like you're creating irresistible content that they can't stop talking about. So really it's like crickets to can't stop talking about. That's one. Say adios to the status quo. So the status quo, which is what, kind of is a general one on purpose. And now it's how to tie your content to strategic goals, yada, yada, right? So status quo, wherever you're stuck at, to tying your content to strategic goals, which is a big challenge, big problem I know my audience and marketers have. And then there's another one, a future, it's kind of called future pacing. Your CEO will beg you to take on more budget, which of course is almost facetious in the marketing world these days, but still fun to say. So I had, I guess, 5 total, but if you said 3, maybe before and afters, I would accept that too. So this is just one example, but the truth is you can have before and after stories on everything from billboards to email copy, LinkedIn posts, like, and it can be quick, right? It can be a quick from to A to B. Where are they at now? They've got this problem. Boom. Where do they want to go? Let's start to paint that picture. And the key here to make this extra effective, if you have visuals, even better. Obviously, this is just text writing here, but the more detailed, like details are what sell. You want to get folks to identify with the problem, identify with that current state, and then paint a picture of the promised land as clearly and as articulated as possible. And that's going to naturally build up desire. And that's going to make it a lot easier for folks to go through, one, go through those different phases, but two, convert, click on whatever it is you're offering in that piece of content. All right, now the scoreboard. Let's see, folks. I love it. Sometimes I do these, and people are like, "There's not 5, there's 6," and I'm like, "There's no trophy. No one wins a trophy. It's just for fun." But congrats, Jesse. It looks like everyone says you win. Oh, he did. Wow, or he or she. Excuse me. They. I don't know. 2 befores, 3 afters. Fantastic. It was a little trickier than I thought by setting this up. Great job. What do you win? You win a shout out right now. There's no trophy. I don't know. If I wish so much I had like one of those like gold trophies you get like playing T-ball or whatever. I wish I had one. I'd send it to you, Jesse. But fantastic. Well, that is it in terms of going through the buyer awareness stages and how to tell stories that sell. Nicole, we can jump back over to Q&A. We've got about 15 or so minutes left. If folks want to hang on and keep having fun in the chat and ask some questions.
Yes, I think one question that I'm seeing, I think this is the only one I see right now, but it said, who should own this level of granular lead management? And I think that goes back to what we were talking about.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say if we're talking about lead management, which is defining an MQL, which is, hey, we want to send this to sales. And what makes an SQL, which is usually sales accepting that lead and saying, yes, we're going to work it and continue. I would say that's got to be at least if not the head of sales and head of marketing, then the next, like the lieutenants, like at that senior director or director level. So it's got to be there. And the reason why is like, you got to think like the business grows when we have enough leads and we have qualified leads that we can sell. Like that's business 101, obviously. So I don't think it's something that you can kind of like hunt and say like, hey, let's let like more, and this is not a knock, but like more junior folks. Like you need people who are at the top of these departments coming together and agreeing on basically how do we win? Like we win by having MQLs that we both agree on. Like marketing believes in them, sales wants to receive them. I think that's probably like what I was trying to talk about earlier. Like, hey, when VP of sales, when someone hits the website and asks for a demo, like who do you want them to be? What state of mind do you want them to be in? That's got to be at the very top. So the next person though is also like marketing ops or rev ops, because once you get it from like a conceptual standpoint, then someone gets to comb through all the data, add fields to CRM, that sort of thing. So definitely going to want some marketing ops, sales ops, rev ops, however you ops it at your company.
Perfect. We did have a question about, will this recording be available? Yes, we will share the recording. It'll go out via email tomorrow. So share it with your team members and pass it around. Melanie asked, how can we make this work for small businesses where we have a very small team? Startups, we have less bandwidth to churn wheel on all levels.
I would go through, and by the way, I'm very empathetic to that. I've been on very small teams and been a team of one. I would look at it and go, hey, of all these, I would audit, and I would say, of all these awareness stages, what assets do we have today? So I'm just doing a mapping exercise. If you're a small team and you're like, we only have one or none, you don't need 5 assets per stage of awareness. Like start with one. Like what do you think would be, like if you could have one dart, right, you're going to throw one dart at the board, what would be the best bet for us for each stage, and go and create that. And then also figure out how you're going to distribute it along the way. So I think one is like just getting something for each stage is better than probably wherever you're at now, which might be none or few.
Perfect. All right. I don't think we missed any questions. I think we covered them all. Perfect. All right. So I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up then. Devin, thank you so much for your time today. This was, I think, a really fun and engaging session. I hope everyone who tuned in enjoyed it. So we just appreciate your time. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Like I mentioned, we'll go ahead and share the recording. And yeah, just thank you. And we look forward to seeing everyone at the next webinar.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for hanging out, showing up, and shout out again to Jesse. You win the award, and also I think Art wins like the most active in the chat award, which I always appreciate. So thanks everybody. I hope you have a good rest of the day, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions as you're thinking through this, activating it, your company would love to help. So feel free to give me a shout. And thanks Nicole for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, gang.